hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome back to another episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Christy Casciano-Burns and Mike Benelli. And today, we are thrilled to welcome back a guest who joined us in our very first year. And believe it or not, that's a long time ago. And this person has continued to rise as one of the sharpest minds in hockey. His name is Jack Hand, and Jack is the former director of player development for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and a longtime contributor to the coaches site, where he shares modern, insightful approaches to coaching, practice design, and hockey IQ development. I use his services personally, cannot recommend him enough. He's worked at nearly every level of the game, from the youth to the pros, and his ideas are changing how we think about teaching hockey. Jack regularly releases courses and ebooks through his blog, the Hockey Tactics Newsletter. Again, I cannot recommend that enough. Go look it up. If you are a coach, it will help you. And today we're talking about the bridge between youth hockey and higher levels of play, which is something I know you're all interested about, how to design better practices, which is something everyone should hear, and what parents and coaches can do to prepare young athletes for long-term success in the sport. Jack, welcome back to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thanks, Lee. Great to see you guys again. Lots have changed since we talked. I think it was during the pandemic, so obviously, lots has changed for the better. So it's great. I wish I were the director of player development. I worked with the director of player development. Right. Shout out to Scott Pellerin, who's now with the Montreal Canadiens. But certainly, yes, I was very fortunate to have lots of experiences working now with kids. When I started with them, they were in minor hockey, and now they're NHL draft picks. They're going to play in the NHL. So I was really, fortunate to see player development, sort of from all angles and from at all age groups. So, very excited to talk with you guys. Looking forward to sharing some information.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. And Jack, you let it off perfectly, because I know one of the burning questions we get from all the parents that listen, even some of the coaches and the kids, is that question: what separates players who actually make it to the next level, from junior pro or house league to triple A or whatever it is? I know everybody wants to know what your thoughts are on how do I know if my kid is going to separate and get there. Where do we even start with that?
Well, where to start with that is the average age of NHL players is somewhere around 26 or 27. So if for whatever reason your kid does not or cannot play high level hockey at 27, then you have to rethink your plan, right? If he's on the ice too much, if he's already having chronic injuries, if he's having signs of, or, she's having signs of burnout at 12, at 8, at 10, it's unlikely that you'll make it to 27, right? Like if you run a marathon and you break out in a sprint, you're not going to make it to the end, right? And even like with the players that I work with who have all these aspects dialed in, I want them to think about, like, what is your game going to look like at 35 or 37 at 40, right? Like one of the players I work with is Alex Huang, who was a 4th-round pick by Nashville this past summer or this summer. And Alex he's 18 now, and I tell him, like, look, I want you to play in the NHL until you're 37, and then you can play with my son, who's 2.5 right now. Like that's your objective, because if you can play in the NHL at 38, that means that you would have done a lot of things right, and you would have had an amazing career and made tons of money.
What? Let me ask you, why, as parents, then do we think that if our kid is not performing at an elite level at 14 years old, that they have no chance of making it? Or if they or they are, like, they're like, oh, 14 years old, he's played on the best teams for the last 5 years. I mean, why is there such a disconnect between what you actually see, the actual footage on the ground, compared to what we all think? Is it because of those 1% superstars that, make it through when they're 17, 18 years old?
So I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, whether it's hockey, whether it's music, whether it's acting, anything else, like the people that we see on TV, they're the best of the best of the best, right? Like if you take 1,000 hockey players, 1 or 2 of them may have a long pro career. Never mind, being all-stars or Hall of Famers. So you can do everything right and still not, quote unquote, make it. But, there's a silver lining in the sense that, a lot of the folks that don't make it, they end up with great life lessons, lifelong friends, a love of physical activity. Maybe, like in my case, I made the NHL not as a player, I didn't come anywhere close, but I made it twice as something else. So obviously, as you said, I worked in player development in the Maple Leafs front office, but I also worked in social media for the Montreal Canadiens like 5 years before that. So I'm waiting to maybe make the NHL a third time. Definitely not as a player. It's way too late. But maybe I'll be an assistant coach. Maybe I'll be an assistant GM or GM. Who knows, right? But what I'm saying is like the target is both very very small if you're talking about as a player, but also surprisingly big if you're talking about like all the other things that go into making pro hockey happen.
Yeah, I think you raised a lot of good points. Hockey can give you a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean your goal has to be the higher level play. Like in the case with my own children, they, neither of them play hockey anymore, but you can tell how much hockey has given to them in the way that they discipline themselves, their work ethic. There's so much that they gained through all their levels of play, each level that is still continuing to give back in their lives.
Jack, that's a great point, Christine, to swing into this. We talked in the pre-show a little bit about the ROI of hockey, right? And I said that we talk about that a lot on this show as the life lessons that Christy just talked about. But you said too that this is a question you get a lot. You want to dive into kind of the way the parents maybe present this to you and how you answer?
So
that's a good question.
yeah, so a part of my business involves consulting with players and especially their parents, because obviously I've kind of been on this path and I've seen it from a couple of different perspectives. And for most parents, they're doing this for the very first time, right? If you have a kid who's very motivated, talented, wants to get better, wants to play at a high level, um, a lot of times the parents are sort of along for the ride and they don't really know what to do or what to expect or what to look for. So I was having this discussion at the rink with a parent that I work with, and his son is he's 17 years old. He's playing the equivalent of prep school hockey here in Quebec, and one of his ambitions is to play Division 1 hockey in the U.S. And it's funny because like I think Division 1 hockey is probably the hottest ticket in town in terms of like parents investing in their kids hockey, saying, I can invest X amount for X number of years, and then if they get a scholarship, then I will have return on investment, right? And I think it's funny because a lot of times, like, sure, if you get a 4-year degree paid for by scholarship, that's great, but there are also other ways to get return on investment, right? You can, if you're Canadian or if you're a dual citizen, uh, Canadian university hockey is great for kids who are sort of in between D3 and D1 level, who want to go to an excellent school. For instance, like I study at McGill University, um, where we have both a men's and women's program with, again, very high level of play. A lot of times, like these players graduate and then they go on to play pro in Europe. Once a decade, you have a guy who makes the NHL. Matthew Darsh, who's now the GM of the New York Islanders, was an alum, and he went from McGill to AHL, eventually to NHL, where he had a really nice career. Um, a lot of these kids, like maybe you don't quite make it at the D1 level, but you go to school somewhere, you keep playing hockey, you go into a program that you like, that hockey again helps you with the discipline and keeps you motivated, because you got to be academically eligible to play hockey, so you got to get go to class and take notes and do your homework and study for your exams. And then after that, you can maybe go play pro in France, which is a great place to live and play, right? Lots of people pay money to go to France and spend time there. But France they have a top division that's very good, that pays well. They also have a second division that you can go there and sort of like semi-pro. But again, lots of great places to play. You can go to Australia, where in the summertime, it's summer for us, but it's winter for them. And again, they have a nice, quote unquote semi-pro league, but good level of play. You got some like former ECHL guys who play there. Maybe they meet someone there, they settle down, they coach hockey, or they work there. Uh, I know people who are in that situation. So the return on investment, it's not just the 4-year degree, the scholarship that you may or may not get. It's getting you through school, but also you have like 10 years ahead of you of playing pro somewhere else. Even if you don't think you can play pro, the CHL level or even SPHL, whatever. There are so many leagues in so many interesting countries in the world that, in terms of whether it's life experience, whether it's meeting people, whether it's actually earning money, uh, there are tons of ways of getting return on investment that way, and not just with a scholarship.
Yeah, it's funny because every financial person I know, and we live I'm in New York, right? So we're like Fairfield County and Westchester and New York City. We got a lot of financial people here, and every one of them would tell you that the best return on your investment is to invest your money in a better way, right? But yet every single one of them that I know become hockey parents. Like they just lose their minds and they forget that the actual way to make the ROI work and go to college for free is probably not to invest in your kid playing college hockey. It's probably the least as far as statistically goes, it's the least way to get a great ROI. So it's funny how, when we all become hockey parents and we say, well, my kid is I'll invest this money because my kid is going to go to play D1. And I think, just based off of the people you work with now, I mean, isn't that getting harder and harder and harder because the landscape, even for college hockey's changed, right? I mean, we're paying somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars to play college hockey now, and it's changing the landscape of what college hockey really was supposed to be. And maybe talk a little bit about that because, to your point, I mean, you could go to a different university, not play NCAA Division I hockey, and still have a great career in hockey in all parts of the world.
Yeah, and again, it all comes back to the idea that, you know, as a player or as a parent, who's taking care of one player, your time frame is different than the time frames of every single coach or GM or program that you're dealing with, right? So if your kid plays U15, right? The time frame for the U15 coach is like, yes, like they want to make your kid better, right? They want to instill good habits, and but they're like, they would like to win now, and they would like to keep their jobs and run a program that has continuity. So their time frame is maybe 1 to 3 years. You go to college, you're dealing with a head coach who has maybe like a 5 year plan, right? But you have a 25-year plan. So ultimately, like, that's why it's important to think about zagging when people are zigging, just because you have different uh, responsibilities and different motivators.
Yeah, I want to add in here too. Just keep it on the ROI stream for a minute here too. That I have seen parents say that in front of their kids, and it's like, oh, it's no big deal. No, I'm like, guys, you just told your kid that if they don't make NCAA D1, that this was a waste of money, and that is not something your kid needs to hear. Okay,
Wrong?
yes, Mike, it's very wrong. And B, again, we've just explored. There's so many ways to get a return on this. But again, I also implore parents that maybe don't look at this as only a monetary journey. Mike's correct. Go put it in the market. Guaranteed you'll make more money if that's the way to do it. But that's not why we invest, right? We're doing this because we love our kids, because we can see the growth that they're seeing. But when a parent says that, it really breaks my heart. And Jack, to your point, the branches to be involved with the game go so far beyond playing. You're an example of that. I'm an example of that, right? You talk about there's a whole big hockey world out there. If your kid loves this game and is obsessed with it, which, I think everyone here is, they will find a path in the game, right? It's not always playing. And even if it is playing, there's a finite amount of time that you can do that, right? You still got probably half your life after this to find some other things. So I think when we talk about ROI, and Jack, you're saying this too, we always say about the life lessons, but you're right. It's expansive what the ROI can be. But I would never, and this is just my opinion, I guess my recommendation, I would never want my kid to think that if they don't make a certain team when they're 20 years old, they've failed the family. And I think it's just a dangerous thought. And I hear it more than I should.
And I do have to give a plug, especially for women's programs. The growth of D3 hockey is phenomenal and excellent play. And that's a fantastic option, especially for young women to play D3 hockey. And, and some of Sophia's friends are now still working in the hockey business. They're doing social media platforms for, AHL teams and NHL teams. So, their love for hockey has continued, and it's giving back in many ways. And a couple of her D1 friends, because she also played D1 hockey, went on to play European League. So, women, young girls out there, a lot of great opportunities for you in hockey.
Yeah, so in the past I've coached women's players who are now playing in Hungary or Switzerland. Like those
Yeah.
are great countries to visit, to live in. It's a different experience, right? Like lots of people go to college and then they go on exchange. So think of it as, you go on exchange for a couple of years, you make a little bit of money, you meet some new friends, you play hockey. Like it's great.
Right. Yeah. So they don't have to focus. Just my kid has to play D1.
My kid doesn't go to Penn State and get that D1 money.
Yeah, there's so many great opportunities now. It's really wonderful to see.
Yeah.
Now, I guess a little bit of a different subject, but I mean, talking about, when you talk about like the perspective of a coach, right, and how they look at a player is so much different than a parent and an advisor and somebody that working with the player has to look at the player. Like, and it's a fine line, right? You have to juggle, not like, don't worry about how, as a player, you really don't have to worry about how the team does so much. The coach does, but you have to be able to work within that. But can you, I mean, knowing that and knowing how coaches feel and players feel and the urgency to I guess, build this, quote unquote skill development in a player. What do you think coaches are overemphasizing today and maybe underemphasizing? Like, where would you feel like a coach is of a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old is overemphasizing that they really don't need to, as opposed to what they probably should be really emphasizing?
So first I'll address it from the parents' point of view, because or even from the player's point of view. And I had a conversation over the summer with a player that I work with who plays major junior hockey now and who is going to play pro later on. And the first thing he asked me was like, how many points do I need to score next season to get drafted?
Oh,
And and like and there is a world where if he scores enough points, he's going to get drafted, right? But I'm like, you're asking the wrong question here, because you scored X number of points last season, which was a staggeringly high amount of points, by the way, and you didn't get drafted. So
Right.
do you think that running it back is gonna like what's that gonna bring to you? So, but the main thing is like, yes, teams look at points, right? Because points is the most important stats in hockey in terms of like who gets to move up, because it's the players who are very skilled, the players who play a lot, the players who are able to get the puck into the dangerous areas, whatever. But for him, it's like it's also a measure of how much are you helping your teammates, right? Because what's an assist? An assist is you do something, hopefully, and the puck goes to your teammate and he scores or she scores, right? So you've normally, if you're somebody who produces assists on a regular basis, you've done something to improve the condition of the puck, and then somebody else gets to take advantage of that. A goal is the opposite, is maybe you've improved the puck for yourself and then you score, or somebody else improves it for you and then you put it in the net, right? So if you think about it along those lines, it's like, what is it that you're doing to put your teammates in a better position? And a lot of times at the lower levels, it does manifest itself in goals and assists and points, but sometimes it doesn't, right? Like, again, the game that I was watching yesterday, it's the player is a young defenseman. He's a little bit undersized, but he defends really great. And when coaches see him, they think, okay, undersized, right-handed defenseman, skates well, good hands, good shot. He's got to be an offensive guy. And I don't see it because he's not doing that every shift. Like, he's not out there playing like Lane Hudson or Kel McCarr. Like, it's not his personality on the ice, but he defends really great because he has all these tools where, like, he knows exactly where the play is going. He gets there early and he breaks up the play. So I'm like, okay, well, you're not getting, a point a game. You might be at half a point a game, but if you stick with it, you get better and better. At 24, you're going to be playing high level hockey, and you're going to have a role that's going to be really important for your team, right? So, I can't speak for all the coaches, but maybe sometimes they have an idea of like, again, small guy has to be offensive, right? Maybe they don't see the a path where 5 years from now, that player could actually be a really great shutdown guy or a character guy who wins face-offs and plays PK. But again, it's because in 5 years he's not going to be playing on that team anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I mean, you literally just described. We just had a big interview with Mike Weaver, and Mike Weaver in the NHL was
Mm.
that player, right? Just was all through his youth hockey career. Like, you got to be a winger. You got to be a winger. You got to be a winger. You can't play D. You're too small. You're too small. But he just had to be in the right place at the right time and know where to take ice and when to take it and when to shut down players and when to eat pucks and like so. And then listening to what you're saying there too, like his story was like that was the story of, well, if I would have listened to all my coaches, that my career would have ended before college. But yet but I knew where I could play. I knew what I had to do to get smarter, and I improved those aspects of my game. And I became an expert at that one, that one fundamental piece of being a defenseman. I think that's where a lot of us as evaluators at the youth level, get clouded by just all the flash. And somebody has to get pucks, and somebody
Yeah.
has to move him out
Yeah.
of the zone, and somebody has to put him in safe areas where other people could have success. So I think again, statistics and seeing that big picture for a coach is I guess that's like the glamorous thing, like the easy thing. But I think it's even harder, like what you're saying, Jack, right?
Yeah.
That you have to be able to like identify those players and what their skill set could be, and then emphasize that skill set
Right.
still in the realm of, I want to be noticed and I want somebody to like me.
So
Right.
it's great that you mentioned Mike Weaver because so my first time making the NHL was with the Montreal Canadiens in 2013-14, and so Mike Weaver was a sort of a trade deadline acquisition, and so he's an undersized right-hand defenseman, and the team had a need for that, and I thought he was a game changer because on that team we had PK Subban who was one of the best in the world at that point, but there was no sort of guy to play behind them or to play on the PK, and like that Habs team did really well in the playoffs, ended up losing to New York in the conference finals, and I thought Weaver was the most underrated addition they made that entire year. And one of the things that I would do that year for fun was I would go around the locker room because after practice, we had to create content for like the social media platforms, and once in a while I would get a couple minutes just to look around. And on that team, there were so many undersized guys. Like Mike Weaver was like, this is all like very generously listed, but Weaver, I think he was 5'8", but in real life probably closer to 5'7". I think he wore like 6.5 skate. You had Brian Giunta, who was like listed 5'7". He's probably like 5'4". I think he wore like 4.5. David Desharnais, who's like 5'6", wore like size 5. Francis Bouillon, who's like 5'7", wears like size 6. So the first thing that I say to a parent and their kid when I start working with them is, you're probably big enough to play in the NHL. You might be big enough already to play in the NHL because
Right.
the Giantas, the Weavers, the Bouillons, the Desharnais, like these are all guys who embraced a certain role. And for Giunta and Desharnais, they were more offensive players, but they were extremely gritty. They were very good along the boards. So a lot of like size is, I would say, less of a limitation than your mindset. Because if your
Yeah.
mindset is, I'm going to play the flank on the power play, I'm going to put up 100 points a season. If the coach doesn't put me there, I'm going to pout or I'm going to change programs. You're probably not going to make it.
Well, I'll say this too. If you have a dream, this could be any dream, actually. This doesn't have to be hockey. There will be no shortage of people telling you that you can't do it and giving
Sure.
you an expansive list of why you can't do it. But that's part of the journey, right? That's part of it, is everyone telling you can't. It's the people that are telling you how to do it or how they think they can help you do it. They're usually pretty valuable. But at the end of the day, it comes from within. It's a great question, great discussion here, guys. I want to bring this up too, because I want to apply this to youth hockey a bit. All right. Now, what's unique in my life right now is I'm jumping from a national team to youth hockey all the time. All right. And I think something I'd like to see coaches do more, and parents too. I think in your viewing of the games, I would love for you to do this. I know you're watching your kid, and I'm not telling you not to do that. That's just the youth hockey experience. You want to see your kid. But I'm going to use two comparisons here to show you this can be done at every level. On a national team level, I have a player. She creates time and space better than anybody I can see on the team. very little point production. Okay. And she's a great example because I went to her and said, this is what I see. There's a huge value here. No one had ever told her that. Kind of broke my heart a little bit. So I put her on a very good line where there's 2 point scorers on that line. And when she gets the puck, she creates opportunities for these players. And if there was a third assist, it's one of those situations, she'd be getting a lot of points. But to be able to see that value and see that that's where you can build from, and this is how you play within the lineup, that's a great example of this is how you get noticed. You're not going to just magically score 50 points in an international season and get to the PWHL. Now, adversely, I'm bringing this up because it shows you it happens at every level. I was just at a Pee Wee game, and one of our defensemen who has, I'll just say this, no shot in terms of like literally shooting the puck, very weak shot, but he is the most defensive-minded defenseman on the team. And we were in a situation where the team we were playing was down, the puck was deep, and everybody's kind of watching the front of the net. And I'm watching him battle at the blue line with a guy trying to cherry pick, and he's not letting him pass the blue line. And I don't think anyone noticed that. And so after the game, I'm telling him, hey, kid, that was a huge play because if that puck squirts out, that kid's gone. And you recognize to be there. Now, again, it's a simpler play, but goes completely unnoticed because everybody's watching at that time, the 8 skaters in front of the net. Expand your vision of the game. We always talk about what you do without the puck. That's kind of a common phrase. Coaches, parents, when you're watching, see what everyone's doing because there are so many values as a player that go beyond getting 100 points a season, which is very valuable. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't. You have to be able to have some production, but there's a lot of different ways to build your game, right, Jack? I'm bringing that up only because I think how we view the game has to change. You have to have talent to make it. It's a prerequisite, but talent shows itself in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's why I think hockey is such a beautiful game in my view, is because again, like I'm not a baseball player, and I don't mean to bash on baseball, but if you're a pitcher and you have just great arm speed, right? You throw the ball 100 miles an hour, then you do that, right? You're going to make the big leagues. But again, like you could be a knuckleball pitcher, you throw at 60, you might still make the big. So, but in hockey, like that thing it's much more obvious. You can be a big guy who shoots the puck hard, who skates really fast, but then you can get outperformed by a small guy who turns well and gets the puck off the wall, for instance. There's many ways to problem solve in hockey, and it's such a rich sandbox for kids to express themselves. So when I look at and this is maybe more like NHL prospects, right? Like beyond looking at their size and sort of their fundamentals and things like that, I'm like, when I watch him, is there an artistic component to what he's doing? Is there does he have an intention, right? Is there a way that he likes to play the game? Like when I watch somebody like, for example, Sam Bennett in the playoffs, he's all about chaos, right? Like he wants to hurt you physically or, with his skills, but he wants to hurt you. He wants to hurt your goalie. Definitely. Right. But, on the one hand, I think it's kind of, it's not great. And I wouldn't necessarily teach a player to play like that. But on the other hand, like I respect the intensity and the intention that he brings to the game. And I think if you're a young player, you have a certain intention about what you're trying to do. You got to nurture that because ultimately that's what's going to carry you.
I love that you said that. And I, again, you're using high level players as an example. I think when we get down to the youth level, like again, might scored hockey, the kind of 10U hockey, that's all pure skill. Like we're learning the game at that point. But once you get a little older, I would love to see 12U players start to have some basic intentions on the ice, right? And parents, that might be coaches, something to talk to your kids of like, what is the intention of this situation or of this drill, of why are we doing this, right? I think there's just too much, here's the drill, go do it. And we don't do enough explanation. It doesn't have to be long. But of the purpose here is this, the intention of this drill is to accomplish this. And then you can apply that on the ice your own way. Quick question on that, Jack. What age, this answer may surprise us. What age do you think that intention should start to creep into the game for youth players, right?
I personally think that intention you're born with.
Ooh, I love
that. The job of the parent, the coaches, or even the player himself or themselves is to acquire the tools that allow that intention to express itself. So I'll give you a personal example. When I was growing up, the first time I ever played organized hockey, I was 8 years old, and we're playing half ice. And what I did was, I was the biggest kid there, but also the worst skater there. I went and I just stood in front of our net. I wanted to be the goalie, but not because I really wanted to be the goalie, but just because I was so bad at skating and handling the puck that I figured if I just got in the way and made some saves, like that was my way of like succeeding in this game. But what happened was, um, my first couple of years organized hockey, I played D. I was a stay-at-home D. Like I stayed at home to such an extent that I would never go past the red line. There was a game where we were down by one. Our coach pulls the goalie. I was on the ice. I was standing at the red line. This is just embarrassing. But what happened was when I was around 10, 11, 12, I started realizing that actually I really wanted to score goals, but nobody's really ever worked with me to do that. And so I had the internet, so I was looking up drills. I was shooting pucks off ice. And when I played high school hockey, I played forward because I wanted to score goals, and I did score some goals. I didn't progress farther than that. But again, that intention, I think, if I go back to when I was 8 years old, I would have liked to score goals. I just did not have the tools, right? Or my son's 2.5. Last winter, I took him out on the ice just in his boots, and he was playing with the puck a little bit. But I know that in his personality, he's a puck retriever or he's a puck carrier, because like he goes to daycare, he doesn't want to share. It's like, this is my toy, I'm not going to share with you, or this is your toy and you got to share with me. That's his personality. So when he's going to start playing hockey one of these days, I don't really care what level, but I think if I just tell him like, look, see that puck over there? That's your puck. Go get that. And he's like, okay, I'll go get it. So,
That's
so
my
I,
toy.
Right.
Yeah.
But don't you think that's like one of the great things about watching a coach? I mean, you're obviously doing this at the NHL level, but it's even more crucial at the youth level for coaches to coach to the player they have, not to the system they want. And just knowing, like, when you're building your team, how do you as a coach pick a kid, and down here it's April, right? April or May. You pick a kid in April, May, and then in December you're like, I can't believe this kid can't do this and this person can't do that. And I go, you selected them based off of what you saw. You knew what they could do and what their strengths were, but then you thought, what, you're going to change them? I mean, isn't that what John Tortorella tried to do with like a Chris Kreider, right, back in the day, right? Like, I'm going to make you a shot blocking, eat the puck in the corner guy. He's like, no, that's not who I am. Like, I'll never be that person. So I think it's just a matter of coaches understanding and seeing what the gifts are the players have, and then maybe it's our fault, right? For as parents, we have to be willing to accept how a coach viewed us and why we were selected on a team or not, right? I mean, it can't just be the top 15 players, top to bottom. Oh, best, 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 best. The rest of you don't play a role. As opposed to, maybe we should be picking teams and articulating why that team was picked based off of the type of system we can play with the players that we were given.
I mean, again, it all comes back to time frames, right? Because if you're a coach selecting a team, your time frame is the next 12 to 24 months. And this is why, like, if you're a player who, whether you're playing at the NHL level, the AHL level, the college level, I would encourage every single high level player to have a person that's going to stick with them on whether it's the skill development side. So somebody like me who's going to look at their clips and who they're going to work with from, let's say, 15 to 35 or 15 to 30, whatever it is. Someone who takes care of their body. So it could be, a physiotherapist, could be a chiropractor, it could be a reflexologist, doesn't matter. But somebody, because when you play hockey in an organization, whether it's a college or a pro organization, these people come and go, right? Like, you might have the same coach. If you have the same coach for 4 years, that's a long time. If you have the same strength coach for 5 years, that's a long time. If you have the same therapist for so it's good to have continuity. And I think that obviously the most important person are the parents, right? Because your parents are your parents. You have continuity throughout your life. So my main objective is I educate the parents first, because I'm not going to be around forever, but hopefully the parents are. So if I educate the parents, then that knowledge, that perspective gradually filters down to the kids, and they'll do really well, I think.
I want to bring up some of that work you do, Jack, because I'm gonna change gears here a little bit. You work with players, you work with coaches. What you do is much more than a newsletter, right? So for the audience listening, this is the person that I call, in addition to you, Mike, but this is the person that I call when I'm heading to a tournament, or I want to look at practice plans. And I just took one of Jack's courses. Again, there's no ego, right? If he puts something out, I'm pretty interested in what he's putting out. And Jack, within that course, you had some drills that really actually made me rethink how I'm doing my drills, right? So I want to turn the episode a little bit now to kind of practice planning and thinking. And just to give the audience a little tease, like I said, I won't give it away, but there was a transition element to the drills that really just opened my eyes to this is something I should have in almost every drill, right? So let's just talk about practice planning, drill planning a little bit. We can kind of go from youth to high level if you want. But I think the first question I want to ask in this line is just about preparing for practice. Mike, Christy, and I have talked about it before. We have seen coaches up without a plan. I'm saying show up without a plan, which boggles my mind how you could ever show up to a practice at any level without a plan, even if it's basic skating. So how much preparation do you think coaches should put in to start? And then we'll expand from there.
Okay.
Right. And also, we've also seen a lot of coaches just plan week to week rather than looking at the whole season.
Right.
Is that a mistake? And what are some of the pillars that need to go into developing a good practice plan?
Mhm. So I can't claim much credit on this because I basically just absorbed uh, sort of the perspective or the knowledge or the wisdom of the coaches I've worked with. So whether it's Peter Smith at McGill University, whether it is Adam Nicholas, who's now with the Montreal Canadiens. Like recently, I went to watch rookie camp, and Adam was running a lot of these small area games with the team's AHL staff, and I filmed all the drills, which I posted to my Twitter feed if you're interested in ever checking that out. But basically, I was thinking, okay, could 8-year-olds do this? And for like the vast majority of these drills, I'm like, yes, 8-year-olds, if they know how to skate and turn and stop, they can do these drills. And I think so. Hockey is a game where I think we don't need to overcomplicate things necessarily. We didn't see a lot of cones or a lot of apparatuses on the ice. Players, they don't need a huge amount of memory to memorize a route that they're supposed to take. So when you watch a good NHL practice, you can use a lot of that with your own players. Doesn't matter what level you're at. So I think that's really exciting because I think you can just straight up copy paste as long as you understand the intention behind it.
Can you just maybe expand even on that the idea of a small area game? I think in my world, when I work with coaches and I say, oh, you have to like incorporating small area games is really such a great way to engage players and engage their minds and their bodies and let them kind of find their own limits of what they can and can't do. And too often, I just see them put the two nets out and they play 3-on-3 cross ice. I'm like, well, that's not really a small area game. Like to me, that's just I mean, I don't know. That's the easy
Yeah,
person's
yeah,
out of a small area
yeah.
game. Can you just talk a little bit about, you know, how a small area game is developed at any level, especially the
Sure,
NHL level,
sure.
but how that, constraint-based learning and the ability to, put different roadblocks in there
Yeah,
for the players so that they do have to get around just being the best player on the ice and,
sure.
beating the other three guys that aren't that good.
Sure. So I'll explain to you how NHL teams do small area games, and depending on the level, I think you'll be able to sort of develop a feel for how to adjust. Because the magic in a small area game is how the coach can organize it to promote certain behaviors. Okay, so that's the real magic. So for example, you talk about 3-on-3, right? And like 3-on-3, like there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's hockey. Plus, there's fewer players in a smaller space, so players get to practice whatever skills that they're using on a higher frequency, which is nice. The problem with 3-on-3 at the NHL level is when you have good players who are big and strong and fast and knows how to think the game, 3-on-3 becomes a battle drill because the puck is constantly in a position where there's a battle around it, right? So if you want to work on playmaking, if you want to work on identifying options, and you're an NHL coach, you should not play 3-on-3. What you can do is play 3-on-2, because then there's an inbuilt advantage or bias in the game where the team with 3 players, they know that somebody's always open, right? So when you start playing 3-on-2, now you're starting to see offense. Now you're starting to see these like small area 2-on-1s and players making like really smart plays and goalies getting some shots and some goals happening. So when you see NHL players play 3-on-2, like for me, that's really interesting, because you're working on offense, or conversely, you're working on defense, because the 2 players who are defending, they got to be really smart and knowing, like, when do I play man on man and close my guy out? When do I have to cut passing lanes and play more of a zone? So when you start sort of throwing your players off balance, that's when you see adjustments being made, right? At the lower level, maybe you play 3-on-3 and there's offense. That means that your players they're underdeveloped defensively, because there should not be a lot of scoring chances of 3-on-3 unless you just have one player who's way too good. So that's the magic of 3-on-3, where you're manipulating constraints to create a certain effect. So first of all, you have to understand what effect are you trying to create, and second of all is like, what levers do you pull? Or another example, when I work with my players in a small group setting, so let's say we're 6 players or 8 players, and we're working on puck protection. And then we'll always end the session with some sort of a small area game. And then the thing that I like to do is say, you can only make passes on your backhand, or you can only shoot on your backhand. Why? Because everybody knows that it's harder to get a pass or a shot off on the backhand. So you got to hold the puck longer. And if you want to hold the puck longer without losing it, then you got to use your puck protection, postures. So again, it ties back to what we're working on before. Or if I want to do conditioning, right, then I play 3-on-3, or maybe I play full ice, but only half the width of the ice, because now players they're skating up and down, they're getting a great back skate in, but there's still the puck and there's still the ability to make plays, and they don't realize how tired they're getting. So it's all about the coach having an eye for the game, a feel for the game, and you're manipulating these constraints. And once you're able to do that, you can arrive with a very, very simple practice plan. Like for an hour and a half, I show up with 5 drills or 3 drills and 2 games. Like that's enough for me. Because then you look at how the players are behaving inside the drill. They're not spending too much time at the boards. I'm not spending too much time explaining things to them. I'm just observing and feeling out where they're at, and then making micro adjustments based on where they're at.
Yeah, I think that's what Christy was saying too, right? If you can't even get to that point unless you have a season plan, unless you have a plan. Like if you don't know your team and you don't look and say, okay, where do I want to be throughout the season? And when do I have practices? How many games do I have? When are my practices? Do I always have 2 goalies? Am I missing players? Like if you don't have a season plan as a coach, then it's really hard to get micro it down to what's my plan today,
Yeah.
right? Because there is no rhyme or reason to development. It's just, hey, let's just throw something on the wall. And I saw it on I saw it on the Twitter account, and I'm going to do it. But why? How? And you don't have the players to do it. Like you don't have the personnel to do that drill. So and the
Yeah.
skill level. So I think it's just really a matter of digging in and looking at why it's so important. I think Christy, right? Not to have a season plan like a daily calendar, but
Right.
like who is your team and what are
Right.
your goals
How
throughout the
about
season?
have
And
a
define
clue?
your culture too.
Yeah, like one of the things I always say to coaches is let's have a clue, and I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's I've seen coaches try and run complex system drills, and the kids can't pass yet. And it's like what I try and do as a coach is I'll look at a team as a whole, and I'll say, okay, what are the 3 to 5 objectives? This is the youth level that I want to hit by the end of the year, right? And then how do I get there? So maybe it is we want to have a really great breakout, whatever that looks like, whatever level you're coaching at. Well, you got to break the breakout down to what are the fundamental skill sets that they need to get this breakout done. And what I see a lot is, well, we're running the breakout every week till we get it down. But the kids can't pass. All right. So you got to put some passing drills in. And then also, like we talked about this, intention. Explain to the kids, this is why we're working on this, right? This is the flow. This is the skill sets. And when I say break it down, coaches, I literally showed a team last week how to catch a puck on your backhand, how to catch a puck on your forehand, how to have your head up, how to have your belly button pointing forward. the funny part is they got that pretty quickly, right? But I see so many broken records like, well, just pass it to the wing, which is also dated, but just pass. We got to have a plan in the sense of I want to have my team accomplish these 3 to 5 things by the end of the season. And then you build your practices in a progression state. This is my point of view to achieve those goals. And if you get to them early, great, you can add upon them, although you'll probably be winning. But I mean, look, these are more thoughts than a question. I'm just posing that to the group. But to me, Mike, that's season planning is what are my goals for this team by the end of the year? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Sorry.
Yeah. And what I would say, it's almost like it's almost cyclical in the sense that like if I talk to a coach and the coach tells me, oh, like we don't do a good job getting off the wall, or we don't do a good job accepting passes on our backhands, and we don't do a good job of staying tight to our checks. That could be a U8 team, that could be an NHL team,
right?
Because those same things come back, and so you're always like, it's not failure that you have to work on things again. I think it's normal,
right?
So
Completely.
as you get better, your opponents get better. The execution has to be, quicker and sharper and more precise. So again, if you're running a breakout drill and you're having trouble, getting the puck off the wall at the half wall, you're having trouble, with your wingers getting the right spots. That for me doesn't indicate failure. That's just a normal part of the game.
Sure.
And you got to be ready to do that every single year, because every single year the bar gets higher. Right. So it's not that your players forgot how to defend. It's just the bar got raised, and now they gotta be a little bit better.
Well, and schools do this too. There's a reason in the U.S. we do U.S. history like 6 times, and we build and build and build. Right. It's not like they teach it to you in first grade and like, oh, you got your history. I love that you brought this up too, Jack, because one of the things I realized, we everybody knows that saying. There's some play to this, but when you hit that 10,000 hour mark, you've become a master of something, which, again, that can be debated. But I remember kind of the time period where I had played long enough that I had built up enough muscle memory that people could show me something. And with a few minutes, I could probably figure it out. But I was like 19 years old, 20 years old when this started to happen, right? When I was 10, 15, there's no way. So to your point, you're supposed to have to work on it over and over again. Right. And again, I'm not sure if I said this. If I did, I was wrong. It's not failure if they can't do it. The failure is if we don't plan and prepare them to build upon it every year. And I think that's sometimes where coaches miss, right? Like I don't like it when coaches just show up and I'm a volunteer. I just got to get them moving. Look, thank you for volunteering. I'll never knock that. But it doesn't take much to prep and plan. Not only are there a million resources where you can find really good practices out there, but just that intention. I think the intention's for coaches too, right? And I think that when you're practice planning, again, Jack, you said it so beautifully, the things you think about, taking a player away, creating transitions, manipulating those drills to expose aspects of your team that you can get better. You've really helped me do that, right? And kind of rethink how I should be creating drills, implementing drills, the result of the drill. Mike says it all the time. He's right. It's not proper that every drill has to end in a goal or a shot. That's not always the best thing. This is going to merge me into the next question. I'm getting on the soapbox again. The coffee's hitting me now in the head. All right. Which is, we got to talk about hockey IQ. It's kind of, look, if you coach youth hockey, you're seeing it. The hockey IQ doesn't seem to be there like it used to be, at least years ago. I talk about this every episode ad nauseum. I'm seeing a lot of kids skate directly at a defenseman with their stick in front of them and the puck in front of them, trying to dangle through them. I'm interested in your take on how coaches can help players maybe build upon hockey IQ. Some of it comes from the player, obviously, a lot of it. But what can we do as coaches from a practice planning standpoint to help expand hockey IQ?
So, you talk about exposing players, right? So exposing players means, giving them an opportunity to fail, or at least to have suboptimal execution, because that's where the learning opportunity happens. So if your players never get exposed, either they're the best in the world or they're going to start the game and get hit in the face, right? Essentially, in terms of their confidence. So I think it's good to have to find smart ways to expose your players and then come in with a correction or a teaching, right? And the thing is that you talk about IQ. So IQ is intelligence, and intelligence is the ability to make finer distinctions. So, for example, my girlfriend, like she paints. She's a visual artist, and if I see something, I can say, well, that's red. But then she can say, oh yeah, it's that specific shade of red. So
Right.
she would be more intelligent than I am because she's able to make finer distinctions. Or if you talk with a chef, right, I can say, well, that's an onion. Like, oh, well, that's a Vidalia onion, and we use it in that. So, the chef is showing superior IQ um, in terms of sort of making finer distinctions. So, in terms of your example with the player uh, carrying the puck into pressure, well, that player is showing a lack of finer distinction in terms of what to do with the puck. Because, on the one hand, you can say, well, this player is carrying directly into pressure. That's bad. But then when Artemi Panarin carries the puck directly into pressure, well, it's because he wants to track two defenders, slip the puck out to a teammate, and all of a sudden they have a scoring chance. So they're doing the same thing, right? But Panarin is showing much higher hockey IQ because he has a greater understanding of the finer distinctions that make this play good
Right.
or that make this play bad.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Because we talked when you're teaching defensemen, even, right, and then recognizing. I don't think a youth defenseman, and probably not a lot of youth coaches, understand the nuance of identifying whether a player's coming in as a righty or a lefty, right? So hockey IQ, you might say, "Oh, I can't believe that player let that player do this." Yeah, but they're just not even identifying the fact that that player could do that because of the strength of their stick handling, their stick sidedness. Like, so those are like all these little nuances here that we don't teach so much, right? The youth level, we just say, oh, just do it. Like, you have to recognize that that player is a righty. Well, how do I do that? Like, I'm in the middle of a game. Like, how do I learn that skill? Right. So, just, as using your example that, certain players, we can't always use the NHL as our teaching tool
Agreed.
as youth, because those players' IQ has accumulated over all this other stuff that happened when they were growing up, and all of those learning processes that we're trying to, just ignore, like, as youth coaches. We're saying, oh no, you should be able to do what Panarin does. Yeah, but do you realize how he got there?
Mhm.
You're not building the blocks.
So great, and that's a fabulous point, which I think the most overlooked teaching tool is your ability as a coach to narrate the play as it happens. So
Mm.
let's say you have two defensemen, Timmy and Tommy, right? Timmy goes out on the ice and he fails to recognize the handedness of the other team's player, and let's say he gets scored on, comes back to the bench. Tommy goes out on the ice, he's defending the rush, and then he forces the other player to the backhand. Well, that's a great opportunity for you to say, hey, look, Tommy recognized the handedness of the other player and was able to force the play into a way less dangerous spot on the ice. And Timmy's sitting right next to you. He's like, oh, okay, well, next time I just got to look and then realize that this matters and just do the thing that works out better for us. So there, you haven't shown him any clips, but you've shown him an example of a player who, like, he can go out and do that right now because they play on the same team. They're at the same level. They're in the same age group.
Yeah, and at the same time, and that's what I love hearing on the bench. Like, at the same time, then the forwards listening over and going, "Oh, wait a minute! If I'm going to get drawn to my backhand, that's why that guy's doing that to me." Yeah, so you want to counteract him and
Right.
be in a place where he can't do that to you. So it's all that's the beauty about coaching. Like, to me, that's where you really get to, like, get in there and say, "Okay, I've watched the player, like the light bulb goes off right there in real time as it's happening, and that player can adjust, and then you can start moving on to these other, complex hockey IQ things." But I think just identifying the identification
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
maybe the
Yeah.
hardest part for
So
us.
so one of the things that I just thought about is maybe players don't seem like they have as good hockey IQ anymore. First of all, because they play less shinny, like unorganized hockey, and
Yep.
the one of the biggest benefits of playing shinny is you get to play with players who are a little bit older than you, right? So if you're 12, you're not going to get a lot of value in playing with an NHLer because again, like it's too far from you. But if you play with a good 14-year-old, you're like, oh, like next year I want to be able to do that, right? Or nowadays, like we drop our kids off at the rink, we watch practice, then we put them in the car, we go home.
Right.
When I played hockey, like I would stay when I played high school hockey, I would stay after and do my homework and watch like the older kids practice, or maybe even like the beer league, like the alumni league, like watch them play a game, and I would pick up stuff from them. So it's just like it's so easy now to get NHL clips, but conversely, it's quite difficult for us to actually sit down and watch a game where the level is just a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Unless maybe like you have like older brothers and sisters and you're at the rink a lot and you watch them. And the same thing with like in women's hockey. Like it's great that the PWHL exists now because at least it's better than showing NHL clips all the time. Right. At least we have some good examples. But for, youth hockey, like I would love to see some, D1 clips or D3 clips or, players who are just a little bit older, a little bit better, because I think it's more actionable.
Yeah, good. Sorry.
No, I'm just going to support you here, man, in the sense of, I think about my own development. There's a lot of roller hockey outside. No one was coaching us. You don't go at the kids straight 15 times because it doesn't work, right? You figure it out. I talk about skating development, put them out at a public session, let them chase each other around safely. And then the last one was, you're speaking to my heart here. When I was 16, and maybe I'm a nerd for this, but my Friday nights were spent going to open hockey with 18 plus players, and they were all better than me, at least to start. But man, did I develop just playing with them, playing with adults, trying to keep up. No coaching, right? Guys are doing crazy things out there. The score doesn't necessarily matter. That state of play is so important for the kids. Everything is structured. We're not allowing them to think. I think that you can create drills that allow them to do that. But you're right. Like just getting out there and playing and having some fun with it, man, that's a tremendous development aspect.
Sorry, Mike. Two building points on that is, again, like you want to simulate having players a little bit better, make it a 3-on-2 or make it a 4-on-3 or so that one team is a little bit better. But the other thing is like now I'm gonna hear, well, every parent is like, I'm gonna look to get my kids against older players. But there's the other side of it, which is if I'm 18 years old and I'm playing against 16 years old Lee, and I just I'm struggling with a certain move, I'm going to try it against Lee first.
Right.
Because there's a bigger chance that I'm going to be able to pull it off. And then once, it could be maybe a between the leg thing where I put the puck and you reach and I put it between my legs and I go around you. Once I do it twice against you, I'll do it against somebody my age.
You reach, I teach.
I think that's it's such a funny thing you say that, because that's literally what I'm thinking, like, well, because that's where confidence comes in. Like, I'm just a big, like, everybody's like, oh, you can't be the best unless you play the best. Yeah, but if you never touch the puck, you'll never get better.
Right.
Like if you never get a chance to play, it's great that you're playing against all these great high level people. But if you actually never get to play and be a part of it, you're not going to get better. So I think to your point is, again, you're not going to play against 8-year-olds when you're 16.
Right.
But if you're playing against a really good 14-year-old, you just happen to be a little stronger, maybe a little more confidence. Like that's where creativity and you get to, like, I was just thinking, like when Jack's saying that, like every parent right now is going, oh, I'm putting my kid in the adult, 6 a.m. pickup slot.
Yeah, that's not what we're saying at all.
But it's funny how you think about it too when you watch like real old guys, like the grizzled veteran hockey players, and they're playing in an adult league game against college guys, and the college guys get so mad, right? Because these older, out of shape players just know how to play like they know position, they know where not to, they're not going to chase you in the corner, they just sit there and poke check you and say, okay, well, yeah, keep going, put your head down and try to dangle me. So I think it really becomes that really becomes such a great thing for everybody involved, because they get to see that it doesn't always have to be fast and quick. It needs to be smart.
Yeah,
and I think just knowing where to be and when to be there is really just the beauty about like learning how to play the game.
Mike, I'll just add on to that. Yeah, there's parameters, right? Like I could skate with those guys. That's why I was out there. I wasn't. And I'm just using myself. Look, another great example. I'll use my son. Right, he's in 6th grade. He's in middle school, and he's out there with the 8th graders, and they're shooting on him. And when he gets to his 12U games, there's a visible difference in his confidence now that he's taking shots from 14-year-olds on the ice, right? But that's age appropriate. It's team appropriate. That's an opportunity for him. So yes, we have to say this disclaimer. Please do not bring your 9-year-old out to adult open hockey in the morning. That will not be good for anybody. But you can find opportunities out there. Or as Jack said, coaches can create that opportunities by unveiling inconsistencies in a team to help out. But yeah, no, it's great stuff to think about. I do think IQ comes from that.
And just the final point to kind of tie a bow on that, which is when I was growing up in the summers, my parents didn't put me in a ton of summer hockey. Like I played a little bit 3-on-3, but the other thing is like I would go and shoot at goalie camps. So I was 15 years old. I'd be shooting on goalies who were like 11, 12, and I would kind of talk to them about like, okay, this is where I'm aiming, or this is like why that puck went through, things like that. And so I was 15 years old shooting on kids who were way younger than me, and that's kind of where my love of coaching started. Like that was my first time working with younger kids, and they were excited to have me there, and we had lots of fun. And when I turned 18, I started coaching high school hockey, and I wasn't going anywhere as a player, but the ability to sort of interact with other age groups, that really sort of sparked something, and ultimately that led to me making the NHL.
Yeah, well,
So
the work you've done is amazing. Go ahead, Christy.
yeah, I'm glad you said that, the work you've done, because as you said in the introduction, Lee, you gave us this great introduction about Jack. I would love to hear more because it sounds so fascinating what you do in the hockey newsletter. So please fill us in, because we haven't caught up with you in a few years.
So I'm still on Twitter or X as it's called now at JHANHKY. Several times a week, I write blog posts on the Hockey Tactics newsletter. You can just Google that. I have video breakdowns for paid subscribers where I basically explain to you a nuance of the game that I picked up from NHL coaches or players throughout the years. Something that I think is not very available in the public sphere, because the people who can work in the NHL are typically working in the NHL right now. I'm doing something a little bit different to get more flexibility, spend more time with family, things like that. So really, if you want someone who has experience working with NHL players and developing NHL players from minor hockey to pro, I would highly encourage you to look up my name, Jack Han, and then find my stuff.
Well, and I'll say this too. I get that newsletter. I always open it. There's always a gold nugget in there. And the work you do, buddy, like I'm happy to pay for it, to have those conversations with you, because you're worth every cent. And I'm going to say it to all the coaches out there. What I love about Jack is, and look, I also think this is what, if you're serious about coaching, you're always trying to evolve your playbook. You're always trying to evolve your understanding. His ability to get me to rethink how I look at practices and how I look at development is invaluable, right? And that's why we loved having you back on. It has been 5 years. I can see you still have your hair. I don't. Congratulations on the kid. But we're out of time here, Jack. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode.
No problem. It was fun talking, and we'll see you in 5 years. 5 years from now.
Yeah. No, I will hopefully sooner than that.
Yeah,
But again, Jack's going to join us on the Ride to Rink, parents. So if you want to have your kids listen to a shortened version of this, make sure you listen to that. But that's going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. For Christy Cash, Anna Burns, Mike Benelli, and Jack Han, I'm Lee Elias. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, something you want us to know, email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com, or there's a link accompanying this episode in the description. Click it. You can text us, leave your name, where you're from, and we will talk about that on an upcoming episode. Enjoy your hockey, my friends. We'll see you next time on Our Kids Play Hockey. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.